Have you ever asked yourself not how to escape life, but how to truly be alive within it? In the quiet space between two breaths, the Buddha discovered something the world had long forgotten, that peace is not found in distant places. It is here, in this moment, where the mind no longer runs and the heart no longer clings. Meditation is not a technique. It is a way of coming home, not to an idea, not to a belief, but to the direct experience of being clear, awake, and free. This is not about turning away from suffering. It is about looking deeply into it until what we thought was pain becomes the path itself. Today, we journey into the heart of the Buddha's wisdom on meditation, not through dogma, but through presence, not by escaping the world, but by touching it deeply, one breath at a time. Welcome to Trandy Wisdom, where every story is a compelling truth. 1. Meditation is the direct path to liberation. The path of awakening does not begin in the sky or end in the pages of a book. It begins in the stillness between two breaths. It begins the moment one sits down, not to chase something, but to stop running. The Buddhists walked this path not in theory, but with bare feet upon the earth. In the solitude of ancient forests and under the shelter of banyan trees, he turned inward not to escape the world, but to understand it. After years of austerity and disappointment, it was in meditation that he finally found the door that opened into freedom. In the Arya Pariyesana Sutta, the Buddha recounts this intimate journey. He sought not worldly teachings, but a truth unconditioned, unshaken by birth, aging, or death. I sought the deathless, he said, and I realized that only through direct experience, through my own mind, could it be known. That realization did not arise through debate, ritual, or asceticism. It came quietly, as the morning star rose over the riverbank, after a night of deep meditation beneath the Bodhi tree. Meditation, in this way, is not an ornament for the spiritual shelf. It is the very ground of awakening. It is the act of turning toward what is real: this body, this breath, this moment without adornment. One begins with mindfulness of breathing, in and out, simple, gentle, clear, not to control the breath, but to dwell within it. The Buddha once said, when a practitioner breathes in mindfully, they know, I am breathing in. When they breathe out mindfully, they know, I am breathing out. This awareness is not mechanical. It is intimate, tender, alive. Yet mindfulness is not the destination. It is the threshold. From mindfulness arises concentration, and from concentration, insight. These three are like a lamp, its oil and its flame supporting one another, revealing what was hidden in darkness. In the quiet stillness of meditation, one begins to see not only the breath, but the nature of reality itself. Impermanence becomes no longer an idea, but a lived truth. Each sensation, each thought, each formation of the mind arises and ceases, like waves rising and falling on the ocean. In this sea of change, clinging dissolves, and the illusion of a fixed self begins to fade. The Buddha described this transformation as entering the stream. It is the first irreversible shift, where the mind no longer sees the conditioned world as solid and satisfying, but begins to recognize the deeper current flowing beneath it. This current is nibbana, not a place, but a reality beyond becoming, a peace not dependent on external conditions. In his own words, there is, monks, an unborn, unbecome, unmade, unconditioned. If there were not, there would be no escape from what is born, become, made, and conditioned. But such liberation is not given by another. It must be touched directly, through practice. That is why the Buddha did not promise salvation through belief, but offered a path one must walk, and that path begins with meditation. The simile of the raft illustrates this beautifully. The Buddha said the Dharma is like a raft used to cross a dangerous flood. Once the crossing is made, the raft is not carried further. Meditation is that raft. It carries us across the sea of delusion. But once freedom is reached, even meditation is let go. Even so, the journey is not dry or ascetic. There is joy in letting go, a joy untouched by possession or status. The Buddha spoke often of the rapture of meditation, the delight of seclusion, the bliss of calm. In the early jhanas, joy and happiness arise from letting go of sensory distractions. In deeper stages, even joy is transcended, giving way to equanimity, silence, and clarity. The practice is not limited to monasteries or caves. The Buddha offered it to all monks, nuns, householders, farmers, mothers. It is accessible the moment one stops and breathes, the moment one observes the arising and ceasing of thought without grasping. In the Kulahati Padopama Sutta, he reminds us that outer appearances or identities are not proof of progress, just as the footprint of an elephant encompasses the footprints of all other animals. He said so too. Mindfulness encompasses all wholesome states. This is not about achieving something extraordinary. It is about returning to what is already here. Meditation reveals that the treasure we have been seeking is hidden in the field we are already standing in. It is the lotus blooming in the mud, the silence within the sound, the stillness within the storm. The mind, when untrained, chases and resists endlessly, but when trained through meditation, it becomes like still water, clear, reflective, undisturbed. It sees things as they are. It sees that suffering arises from craving, and that freedom arises from letting go. It sees that nothing, not even suffering, is permanent. Liberation, then, is not found in another world. It is found in this one, when the mind is free. Free from delusion, free from fear, free from self. In meditation, we come home not to a place, but to a knowing that cannot be lost. And so, when we sit in silence, we do not sit to gain anything. We sit to stop. We sit to see. We sit to remember the depth of being alive. This is the Buddha's gift, not a dogma, but a way. Not a belief, but a mirror. The path is always beneath our feet. We need only return to it, with each breath, each step, each moment of deep looking. This is why the Buddha called meditation the direct path, because it does not wander. It leads straight into the heart of reality and out the other side, free. 2. The 4 foundations of mindfulness, the heart of meditation. The silence of the forest is not empty. It listens. It holds the weight of centuries of seekers who sat with their breath and watched their lives unfold like petals in the morning light. The Buddha, too, sat. And what he discovered was not a secret, but a path made of attention, a path made of presence. This path was given the name Satipatthana, the 4 foundations of mindfulness. It is not a doctrine to believe, but a set of doorways into reality. In the Satipatthana Sutta, the Buddha spoke clearly. This is the direct path for the purification of beings, for the overcoming of sorrow and lamentation, for the disappearance of pain and grief, for the attainment of the right path, for the realization of nibbana. It begins not with gods or heavens, but with the simple act of dwelling in the body, as it is, in this very moment. The first foundation is mindfulness of the body. This is not theory. It is the coolness of breath touching the nostrils. It is the rhythm of the chest rising and falling. It is the body standing, walking, sitting, lying down, recognized without judgment. The Buddha taught us to observe the body like a wild deer carefully, gently, without disturbing it. One becomes aware of the four postures, of the breath, of the movements, and even of the decay and impermanence of the body. In the Kayagata Sati Sutta, he instructed monks to reflect on the body as composed of elements, to see its nature clearly, not to despise it, but to stop clinging to it as me or mine. The second foundation is mindfulness of feelings, not feelings as in emotions, but sensations pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. These feelings are not fixed. They arise and pass, like clouds across the sky. A practitioner watches them as they come, as they stay, and as they go, without becoming entangled. The Buddha used the image of a man struck by two arrows. The first arrow is pain. The second is our reaction to it: aversion, clinging, fear. Through mindfulness, one learns to experience the first without firing the second. In this space, suffering begins to ease. The third foundation is mindfulness of the mind itself. Here, the meditator begins to observe the quality of awareness. Is the mind concentrated or distracted? Is it filled with desire or free from it? Is it contracted or expansive? The Buddha compared the mind to a pool of water. When muddied by thoughts and emotions, it cannot reflect the moon. But when clear and still, the truth is revealed without distortion. One does not control the mind. One watches, and through watching, the mind transforms. The fourth foundation is mindfulness of phenomena, the dharmas. This includes the contemplation of the five hindrances, the five aggregates, the six sense bases, the seven factors of enlightenment, and the four noble truths. Each is examined, not intellectually, but experientially. One sees how desire arises, how aversion takes hold, how ignorance clouds perception. And with that clarity, the chains begin to loosen. Mindfulness, then, is not mere awareness. It is a kind of sacred seeing, a compassionate and non-judgmental observation that reveals things as they are. It is not analysis, not resistance, not suppression. It is a gentle abiding. It is sitting with your sorrow like an old friend. It is smiling at your anger as it tries to pass through you like a storm. It is noticing the flicker of jealousy without letting it harden into action. In the Mahasatipatthana Sutta, the Buddha emphasized that one must practice these foundations internally, externally, and both. This means we observe not only our own bodies, feelings, and thoughts, but also how they relate to others and to the world. The practice does not require special conditions. It only asks for presence. Washing dishes, listening to someone speak, hearing the rain tap on the roof, each is an opportunity to come home. The breath is always with us. The body is always here. The present moment is always waiting. And with it, the doorway to insight. The fruit of this practice is not detachment in the cold sense, but a warm freedom. One no longer clings to pleasure or runs from pain. One walks with open eyes. One begins to respond instead of react. The Buddha taught that one who develops the four foundations of mindfulness for even 7 days can reach liberation. He was not exaggerating. For mindfulness is not linear. It is like a spark that lights the whole field when the conditions are ripe. Through this practice, the illusion of permanence begins to dissolve. One sees clearly that form is impermanent, That feeling is impermanent. That perception, formations, and consciousness all are in constant flux. The self that we cling to is not a solid entity, but a stream of conditions. In that realization lies a quiet peace, not the peace of ignorance, but the peace of no longer needing illusions. And so we return to the foundations: body, feeling, mind, phenomena. These are not separate. They inter-are. The breath touches the body, which generates feeling, which affects the mind, which perceives phenomena. To observe one with clarity is to begin understanding all. The Buddha did not give us systems to believe in. He gave us tools to wake up. Among the greatest of these is the 4 foundations of mindfulness. They do not promise miracles. They invite a deeper miracle, the miracle of being fully alive, awake, and free in this very moment. The forest continues to breathe. The earth continues to turn. But for those who practice, the world no longer spins them. They stand in the center, still, knowing that liberation is not a place, it is this mindful step, this open gaze, this breath that knows itself. 3. From mindfulness to concentration, the attainment of jhana. The forest breathes differently when the mind is still. Every leaf, every rustling wind, every falling petal becomes part of a greater silence. This silence is not the absence of sound, it is the presence of depth. And it is within this depth that the mind, once scattered like dry leaves in the wind, begins to gather into one flame. This is concentration. This is samadhi. The Buddha often described the movement from mindfulness asai to concentration samadhi, not as a leap, but as a natural flowering. Mindfulness, sustained gently over time, is like rain nourishing a field. Concentration is the blooming of that field, strong, luminous, unwavering. In the Digha Nikaya, he compared it to a still lake, where even the smallest pebble can be seen clearly at the bottom. When the surface of the mind is undisturbed, wisdom arises without distortion. But how does one reach this clarity? The Buddha did not speak in riddles. He offered precise guidance. A practitioner begins with mindful breathing, simply being aware of each inhale, each exhale. This breath becomes an anchor. And as attention deepens, the mind ceases its usual wandering. Distractions fall away, like dust in sunlight. Thoughts may still arise, but they no longer pull the mind off course. Like clouds drifting through the sky, they are noted and released. With continued presence, the first stage of deep meditative absorption, our jhana, arises. It is not willed into being. It unfolds naturally when the mind becomes one-pointed and free from the 5 hindrances: sensual desire, ill will, dullness, restlessness, and doubt. In the Vitakkasanthana Sutta, the Buddha teaches 5 methods to abandon unwholesome thoughts and develop wholesome concentration. He does not demand suppression, but encourages substitution, reflection, and gentle redirection. The first jhana is marked by applied and sustained thought, vitakka and vikara, joy piti, and pleasure sukha, born of seclusion. The meditator feels a rapture that is not of the senses, but of the heart released from craving. It is the happiness of stillness, the joy of simplicity, a bird resting on a windless branch. As the meditation deepens, the second jhana emerges when applied and sustained thoughts subside. The mind is no longer constructed. It simply abides. Joy and pleasure remain. But they now arise from the inner silence itself, not from effort. The Buddha described it as a state of internal confidence and unification of awareness. The meditator becomes like a candle flame unmoved by breeze. In the third jhana, even rapture fades. What remains is quiet contentment and equanimity. One is neither exhilarated nor disturbed. The Buddha likened it to a lotus blooming in a calm pond, nourished by the waters yet untouched by the mud. It is the dwelling of one who has let go of joy, not from rejection, but from fulfillment. The fourth jhana is the stillest of all. Beyond pleasure and pain, beyond joy and sorrow, the mind rests in pure equanimity and mindfulness. It is like sitting at the center of a turning wheel. Everything moves, yet one remains unmoved. The Buddha said, with the abandoning of pleasure and pain, with the previous disappearance of joy and grief, one enters and dwells in the fourth jhana. Here, the mind is luminous and balanced, open, like a clear sky before dawn. It is important to understand that jhana is not a trance. It is not the shutting down of awareness, but its refinement. One becomes more present, not less. One sees more clearly, not less distinctly. In the Kula Sunyata Sutta, the Buddha emphasized that these states are useful only when used wisely, never as ends in themselves. Concentration is a means, not a destination. When used skillfully, it becomes a foundation for liberating insight. Indeed, the purpose of concentration is to prepare the mind for direct seeing. Just as a sculptor needs steady hands to shape fine detail, the meditator needs a stable mind to penetrate the true nature of reality. From samadhi arises vipassana insight, and through insight, the three characteristics of existence become visible: impermanence, anicca, unsatisfactoriness, dukkha, and not self, anatta. The self, once held tightly, is seen to be a collection of conditions changing, empty, and free. The Buddha never urged attachment to jhana. Even these sublime states, he warned, must be let go. Like the raft that carries you across the river, they are left behind once the far shore is reached. In the Upakilesa Sutta, he cautioned monks not to become intoxicated by light or visions, but to keep returning to awareness, to keep watching, to keep releasing. This teaching reveals something gentle but radical. The way to freedom is not by adding anything to the mind, but by quieting what obstructs its natural clarity. Jhana is not something you create. It is what remains when you stop interfering. And its presence is not far. It is closer than your breath. It begins with a simple willingness to stop. And so, the path from mindfulness to concentration is not a ladder but a deepening, a softening, a settling, from watching the breath to being the breath, from observing thoughts to resting beneath them, from effort to stillness. In this stillness, the mind becomes a mirror, clear, open, free from distortion. And in that reflection, truth appears. The forest remains. The winds still pass through the trees. But for the one who dwells in jhana, even the rustling of leaves becomes a dharma teaching. Even the silence between bird calls reveals the nature of mind. And in that silence, something ancient stirs, something not made, not born, not bound, something that waits in each of us to be remembered. 4. Meditation is not escape. It is insight into reality. When a mountain stands silently above the valley, it does not ignore the world below. It simply sees it more clearly. From that still height, rivers become lines of light, storms reveal their shape, and the restlessness of the village below becomes part of a wider peace. Meditation, too, is this mountain. It is not a retreat from the world. It is a place from which the world can finally be seen. Many have misunderstood meditation as an escape, a turning away, a closing of the eyes to suffering, injustice, or the unbearable chaos of modern life. But in truth, meditation is the opposite. It is a turning toward a courageous willingness to sit with what is without embellishment, without running. The Buddha never spoke of meditation as withdrawal. He spoke of it as awakening. In the Sappurisa Sutta, he described the wise person as one who lives with awareness of the arising and fading of all things. Such a person does not deny life, they penetrate it. They do not cling to joy, nor flee from sorrow. They rest in the center of it all, with a heart that is both tender and fearless. When we sit in meditation, we are not creating a sacred space. We are uncovering one that has always been here, buried beneath the debris of distraction and desire. We begin with the breath, not to escape the body, but to enter it. The Buddha said, just as a skilled carpenter sees the marks on wood, the practitioner sees the breath entering and leaving. This breath is not a tool for relaxation. It is the gateway to the present moment. And the present moment is the only place where reality can be touched. To meditate is to become intimate with impermanence. The itch on the skin, the ache in the spine, the thought that arises and vanishes before we can name it, all of it is teaching. In meditation, we see how sensations come and go, how feelings shift, how the mind clings, resists, or judges without our bidding. We watch these patterns unfold, not to control them, but to understand them. In the Satipatthana Sutta, the Buddha guides us to observe the body in the body, the feelings in the feelings, the mind in the mind, and the Dharma in the Dharma. This means we do not observe concepts, we observe direct experience. When anger arises, we do not suppress it or explain it away. We name it, feel it, and sit with it until its story dissolves and its energy settles. In that seeing, something shifts, not the world, but our relationship to it. This shift is insight. It is the moment we recognize that we are not our thoughts, that the pain we carry is not personal, that the self we defend so fiercely is, in fact, a fluid constellation of causes and conditions. In the Anatta Lakkhana Sutta, the Buddha points to the 5 aggregates: form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness, and reveals that none of them can be owned, clung to, or claimed as I or mine. Meditation is how we see this truth, not as philosophy, but as lived experience. Meditation is not a technique. It is a way of seeing, a way of being. When we sit quietly and observe the arising of a memory, the burning of a fear, the heaviness of regret, we are not indulging them. We are freeing them. We are allowing them to complete their story, to be seen, to be released. And in doing so, we are healing the hidden chambers of the heart. In the Kulahatipadopama Sutta, the Buddha warns against mistaking signs of progress for the goal itself. Just because the meditator experiences calm or light or joy does not mean they have reached the end. True insight goes further. It unravels the core of clinging. It sees the suffering of holding on, and it sees the freedom of letting go. There is nothing passive about this seeing. It is the work of presence, of discipline, of love. It is not a floating away. It is a sinking in. Like a seed that burrows deep into the soil, breaks apart, and rises transformed, the seed does not escape its shell. By fleeing it, dissolves it from within. In a world addicted to speed, meditation is radical. It asks us to stop, to look, to breathe, to feel. It does not ask us to be good or wise or perfect. It asks only that we be here, fully, with whatever arises. And in that willingness to face reality, reality softens, not because it changes, but because we do. The Buddha once said, just as the great ocean has one taste, the taste of salt, so too does my teaching have one taste, the taste of liberation. Meditation is the taste of this liberation. It is not an escape from the burning house. It is the knowing that the fire cannot touch what is already free. When we rise from the cushion, we do not leave meditation behind. We carry it in our steps, in our gaze, in the way we listen. We begin to walk through the world with eyes that no longer seek control, but understanding. With a mind that does not demand certainty, but rests in unfolding. With a heart that no longer builds walls, but opens gently, like a flower. And so, meditation is not a path out of life. It is a path deeper into it, into the breath, into the body, into the truth that has always been here, waiting beneath the noise. In silence, we remember that the world was never the problem. It was our forgetting that caused suffering. Meditation is the remembering. And in remembering, we return not to a place, but to a way of being that sees all things clearly and loves them just the same. 5. Meditation is a practice of the wise, not of blind faith. The sound of the bell does not ask for belief. It only asks for attention. A leaf turning in the wind makes no claim about truth. It simply reveals its nature. The path of meditation is like this. It does not require faith in what cannot be seen. It invites one to see for themselves. The Buddha never demanded blind belief. In fact, he often warned against it. In the Kalama Sutta, he addressed the people of Kesaputta, who were confused by the conflicting teachings of various religious leaders. With compassion and clarity, he said, do not go by reports, by traditions, by hearsay, by scriptures, by logical reasoning, by inference, by analogies, or by the thought. This contemplative is our teacher. But when you know for yourselves that these things are wholesome, then you should enter and abide in them. This is not skepticism. It is trust, grounded in direct experience. Meditation, then, is not a ritual to appease the unseen. It is an inquiry into the nature of the seen and the seer. It begins not with answers, but with questions. What is this mind? What is suffering? Is there a way beyond it? The practitioner does not meditate because it is written in a book or preached by a teacher. They meditate because suffering is real and because they wish to understand it, not from a distance, but from the inside out, like a healer who must taste the medicine before offering it to others. The meditator drinks from the well of stillness to see what truly nourishes and what poisons the heart. In the Vimamsaka Sutta, the Buddha even encouraged his disciples to investigate him. You should examine me, he said, as a goldsmith tests gold by burning, cutting, and rubbing. He offered his teachings not as commands, but as tools. Come and see, he said. Ei Pasiko, an open invitation, not a demand. This approach requires courage. It is easier to follow blindly than to look deeply. It is easier to bow than to observe the bowing. But meditation is the practice of those who dare to turn their gaze inward, not to affirm what they already believe, but to discover what is truly there. When one sits in silence, they are not affirming a doctrine. They are returning to the breath. They are listening to the body. They are observing the mind. Over time, they begin to see patterns: how craving arises, how anger tightens, how fear contracts. These are not abstract concepts. They are lived experiences. And as clarity deepens, something quiet and profound emerges. Not belief, but understanding. This understanding is not given from outside. It arises naturally when the fog of distraction begins to clear. The Buddha compared the mind to a pool of water. When stirred by wind, covered in weeds, or muddied by impurities, it cannot reflect the moon. But when still, clear, and undisturbed, it mirrors the world as it is. In the Kankyo Sutta, the Buddha rejects mere reliance on sacred texts or ancestral wisdom. He acknowledges their place, but insists that truth must be verified in personal experience. One who practices in accordance with the Dharma sees it for themselves. He says, "This seeing is not bound by culture, race, class, or belief. It is universal, available to anyone who sits with sincerity and presence." The wise do not cling to concepts. They observe them. They do not worship thoughts. They study their arising and passing. In meditation, one becomes like a scientist of the heart, testing, refining, discarding, deepening. One begins to trust not in ideas, but in awareness itself, not in theories, but in the breath, not in a promised heaven, but in the felt freedom of a mind that no longer clings. This is why meditation cannot be separated from wisdom. It is the soil from which wisdom grows. Without mindfulness, knowledge becomes memory. Without presence, faith becomes dogma. But when one sits with what is not resisting, not embellishing, wisdom begins to flower, slowly, quietly, like light entering a dark room. The Buddha once said, "Even if a person lives 100 years, unwise and uncomposed, better is one day lived with wisdom and meditation." Wisdom, here, is not intelligence. It is intimacy with the truth. It is seeing things clearly, as they are, without the distortion of opinion, fear, or hope. There are many who sit on cushions, but not all are truly meditating. To meditate is not to mimic a posture. It is to embody inquiry. It is to rest in not knowing long enough for insight to appear. It is to meet each moment with the humility of a beginner and the courage of one who has nothing to prove. Even devotion, when grounded in mindfulness, becomes a sacred kind of investigation. One bows, not because it is expected, but because they have touched something vast and kind within themselves. The gesture becomes real, not performance, but recognition. And so meditation remains, not as a relic of ancient culture, but as a living path for those who seek to understand, not through dogma, but through the depth of their own stillness. It is the path of the wise, because it is not about believing more, but needing less. It is not about knowing everything, but about seeing clearly, even just one thing: a falling leaf, a silent breath, a flicker of thought, dissolving before it lands. These are not distractions from the sacred. They are the sacred. Meditation, then, is not the end of faith. It is its transformation. From something inherited to something discovered. From something accepted to something lived. In this transformation, the practitioner walks not behind the Buddha, but beside him in the same silence, under the same sky, with the same open mind. You don't need to believe. You only need to breathe. The Buddha didn't ask us to follow. He asked us to look, to sit quietly, to touch life just as it is. Meditation is not escape. It's returning. Returning to your breath, your body, your true home. Don't wait for silence to find you. Be the silence. Right here. Right now. This is the doorway. Step in. If this brought you stillness or insight, let it ripple outward. Like, share, and subscribe to walk this path together. Your presence supports mindful content and invites others home.